Hello ladies and gents, this is another video brought to you by Ant's Hood. So today's video is going to be about my Carebara diversa and the monster of all queens. Because look at her, I mean she's huge. I mean these are minor worker that's on her back, but she's massive. I can't comprehend how big she is compared to the rest of the colony. She's just a monster. It's been almost 2 months since I've actually done an update on these girls, so they are well overdue. I've just got so many other videos to make as well. I've kind of left them by the wayside. But that doesn't mean I've forgotten about them. It definitely doesn't mean they're not doing very well, because to be fair, they are doing all right. My Carebara diversa have their own playlist, and I'll put a link in the top right corner to that now. But let's have a quick recap, if I can get my English out today, on what the colony was doing in my last video. If you cast your minds back, last video they were still in the test tube, but I was moving them into the Wakooshi 3.5 nest. And the reason, even though you're looking at them now, there is a major there, which is cool. Even though you're looking at them now and they've still got plenty of space in that test tube, the reason for moving them, as I explained in my last video, was because this test tube was dry and they don't always do brilliantly in a test tube, so I kind of wanted to move them into a nest. Now I know the nest full well would be too big for them, but I knew they'd fill it quite quickly, and they're now fully moved into that nest, as you'll see in a second. But if we cast our minds back at these guys and what we're looking at here, as you can see, they've got plenty of brood in different stages, and they've got loads of minor workers. Now the minor workers for Carebara are the backbone of the colony. They are not the most famous of the Carebara ants, because we all think about the walking tanks that are the super majors, which aren't too dissimilar to the size of the queen. And as you can see, compared to the majors, you can see the queen in the background there. She is absolutely ginormous. She is the monster of all queens. Now, out of all the colonies that I'm aware of, that I keep especially, for scale wise, she is by far the biggest queen compared to the workers that I've got. Now these workers are very, very small. They're probably about the same size as Solenopsis, not much bigger, a couple of millimeters. But the Solenopsis queen, even though the Solenopsis do have majors, is nowhere near as big as what she is. She dwarfs it by at least of a mass. I would say at least 5 times, possibly bigger. She is absolutely huge. She is a monster. But anyway, so that was how the colony was a little while ago. It had one major, as you notice as well. It got some media workers too, but let's check her out now. In this next video, I'm going to slow it down by half, so don't worry that the ants are moving slowly. They're not poisoned or anything. So their Outworld is just this small AliExpress Outworld. It was like $5 or something. Very cheap, but very good for small species. And they're currently housed in the Wakooshi MS 3.5 Gen 2 stuff. Now this is perfect, so I love it because it's gypsum, it holds on to humidity, and these guys do like it humid. But let's get the macro lens onto it, because you know I love a macro shot. So this is a colony as it is. You can see loads and loads of fresh eggs there, and there's a nice big pile of brood. Just look, that is the admin and the queen. She's just so big compared to the workers. She literally is a monster. But you can see I've got absolutely loads and loads and loads of minor workers, and there's a media worker, I believe that is, not a major. But you can see that they're doing absolutely brilliantly. People say that these guys are only good for an artificial setup. Wrong. For a naturalistic setup where they can dig in mud and stuff like that. There is issues with having a setup like that, such as mites and things. But also is to stop them burying everything, because they will cover everything in mud and stuff if you give them that option. This is why I've gone for an artificial setup, because I know that they can do okay in artificial setups. I've seen them on the internet and stuff like that, and I knew that the Wakooshi stuff, because it does hold on to that humidity really well, it will be really good for them as too. And it's the MS series, so they're good for small species, and obviously these guys have got a massive queen in there, so it's good for big species as well. But anything like high humidity, these nests are the bee's knees. You can see loads of different brood in loads of different stages, and just look how big she is. What a monster. Absolutely huge. Now I know what you're saying. You're like, well, Hood, in a nest that big for them, whether this size colony is too big and I'll start putting trash in the nest. And yes, that's what they're doing. Am I concerned about that? No. And I'm not concerned about that, because Carebara are a very fast growing species. As you can see here, they have grown really quickly in the past month anyway. But because they're a fast growing species, when they get to roughly the size they are now, they should start picking up even quicker now. And this is why I'm feeding them a lot of protein, but I'll talk about that in a bit. Then they'll quickly expand into that nest before it becomes a mold issue where I'm going to be concerned about them. So I really am not concerned about it at this precise moment in time, because once they need to expand into that space, they'll just move the dirt out into the outworld. That was a major. believe it, that was the major. This is also a major. Now, funny enough, changing the subject slightly about the majors, is that I've not seen the majors come out of the nest at all. They have been, since I've had them, they've had majors. Not many, admittedly. There's only about 4 here in this nest currently. But they are being used purely as the larders, and they are just the storage devices for the colony from my observations. I also believe the super majors do the exact same role and act as larders as well, but they do go out and do some cutting up as well. And you'll find that with a colony of this size, even if they have majors, the majority of them don't actually leave the nest very often. They're there for storage and they're there for nest protection. Very occasionally you might see them stomping all over the Outworld, cutting up bits and bobs, and depending how many you've got. But generally speaking, at this stage, they're more valuable in the nest, protecting it and storing up all the food they've collected. All in all, they have been a colony that I have not been concerned about in any shape or form. They are kept at around 25 degrees, which is the room temperature of my ant cave, like I've said before about my leaf cutters, and I've not worried about them since. I've literally left them on the shelf and left them to it. Realistically speaking, we should do that with all foundation stage colonies, because in the foundation stage they're most vulnerable to stress, the queen eating the brood and stuff like that. Now, Carebara queens are generally really chilled out. They don't go anywhere fast. That might be because they're so bloody big, they don't move anywhere fast. A bit like me after I've had a Sunday roast. I'm stuffed full of food and I don't go anywhere quick. That might be the case with them. She's just so big she doesn't move very quickly. But I've been feeding them a lot of protein, probably more than I would any other colony. And I think this is why this video here is a bit haphazard with them actually paying any attention to this food, because I've been feeding them a lot of cockroaches. I don't generally feed them big ones. I feed them roughly a cut in half, as you can see here, medium-sized roach. Now, the reason why I've been stocking them full of protein is because they have got quite a fair bit of brood, and that brood does grow relatively quickly, well, the minors do. But also the majors take a lot longer to grow, but they have clearly, as you've seen in there, I've got some majors that are developing in, because the size of the larva was huge. So this is why I've been feeding them a lot of protein. I've not seen any protein poisoning, which is another one of those things that is in the ant community. I have never actually witnessed many ants, well, definitely this size, suffering from protein poisoning, probably because they've got the brood that can process it. Now, these guys have clearly got the brood. I'm roughly giving them this size cockroach, give or take, every 2 to 3 days. And as you can see, the colony's doing fairly well. Yes, again, I've said before, I've literally left the colony to itself, and that is the best way to deal with these. Don't disturb them too much, because then every time I do disturb them, yes, the queen seems chilled as anything and the workers go crazy, but with the workers firing off the stress pheromones that may run the risk of damaging the colony in the long run. If I really wanted to make this a great video, what I would have done is starved them for a little while, because even though you've watched this in real time, they have come quite quickly to recruiting them. I have seen them go a lot more crazier over food once I put it in there. They are very much like their Fidolis and their Solenopsins. Once they get food there, they tend to swarm it a lot. But they've, like I said, as you'll see with a time lapse I'm going to play in a bit, they're a lot more chilled about this, because they're obviously well fed on protein. What I'm also feeding them is carbohydrates, as you can see in the top left. That's I think is it sugar snaps or something like that, fruit snaps, which Antantics does. I've got quite a bit of that at the moment. I really do like it, because I can keep it in there for a lot longer than I can honey water. And I've got a water feeder there as well, because they're in a nest now and haven't got a test tube, so haven't got a regular supply of water. These feeders are actually the ones that I make, and they're really good because they stop the smaller ants getting inside the bottles. So it's really good setup that I've got going on at the moment. And to tell you the truth, this Outworld is, like I said before, the AliExpress cheap Outworlds that are like, including postage, I think you're looking at £7, sorry. And they're really good for foundation colonies, because I'm a big believer that if you've got a test tube that's got workers in it, then I always attach, well, a colony that's in a test tube that's got workers. I'm not overly quick, even though I was with these guys, admittedly, to move in foundation colonies out of test tubes into a nest, because I think that's a lot of issues that people move them too quickly. And there's a media worker there attacking the cockroach, which is cool. But I attach these little Outworlds so the workers can go out and forage and pick up the food. That means I don't disturb the queen, which is what I've done with these guys since the word go. So I've not disturbed the queen at all, really, when I'm feeding them. And that's the main thing, because you don't want to stress the queen out, especially if you've got something like a more common Mesa barbarus, who the queen, every time a little bit of disturbance, she goes absolutely crazy. She's running around all over the place and getting stressed out. with this little Outworld attached to it, which is what these are really good for. You don't get that stressed out nature, because you can literally just pop the top off, drop the food in, and then leave them to it. Clean it out if you need to. If you've got a good setup where it's all on a desk already, there's no need to disturb the queen at all, and that's why I love these little Outworlds. What you'll notice more in a time lapse than you will this is that they have this habit of putting anything they've got in the Outworld to cover the food source. They are prolific berriers, and this is one reason why I've not gone for a naturalistic setup, because like I said before, if they've got earth anywhere, they'll stick it all over the place and they'll just cover everything in it. And they also bury their feeders, liquid feeders, and they bury their food as well. They're very, very prolific at burying all their stuff. So for viewing pleasure for you guys and me, I have tried the artificial setup, and at the moment they're doing great. Now if they get bigger in numbers and then they have a crash, then I might have noticed the limitations of having an artificial setup. But generally speaking, naturalistic setup is what the general rule of thumbs with these guys. But like I said before, I have seen some large colonies in artificial setups, and I really want Solenopsis where I can actually film them for you guys. So I've gone for this artificial setup with no substrate in any shape or form, because otherwise I'm telling you not, believe it or not, they would actually bury the cockroach by now if I'd put it in there with substrate. They're terrible for it. And if we get a macro shot onto the cockroach, and you see what I mean, already there was a bit of time difference because that last video was 7 minutes long. I've just cut it short. You'll see they've already stuck a load of rubbish to it already, because like I said, they've got this habit of burying stuff. But what is interesting is I've not actually seen many many media workers coming out and actually collecting the food. But you can clearly see as she's bobbing an abdomen up and down, there's and clamped onto the antenna. It looks like the antenna she's on. Oh no, she's on the mouth parts of the cockroach. That is a media worker. You'll be tempted to believe she's a major, but she's not. The majors are a lot bigger, and the super majors are just huge. But this is what I mean about my time lapse when I said earlier that initially there was loads of them all interested in it, but all they did was put rubbish all over it and then move on. That's not saying they don't want this, they do. Like I said, it's the habit of burying stuff, but there is very little interest in it, and I think it's because they're well stocked on protein. Am I going to ease up on feeding them protein? No, I'm not. I'm going to continue feeding them as much as I do. I'm not concerned about protein poisoning because they've got plenty of brood that will process it all anyway, and they've obviously got the majors to store it in their social stomachs, so I don't need to worry too much about the poisoning, as it were. Unfortunately, I've got a fetish for crazy ants, and Carebara come under that crazy ants category because they do grow in vast numbers. They can have multiple queens. What I've been told is queens live to about 4 years, and then around the 3-year point you want to introduce a new queen, and they will apparently accept other small colonies and merge together. I have not seen this done on video yet. If I ever come to that point, I may consider it, because the queens are relatively short-lived and that just keeps the colony keep going. So I am going to consider that in the future. It's not nothing I'm looking at now, obviously, but they are crazy because they grow very fast and they get very large in numbers. So yet again, this is another one crazy species, should I say, that I've taken on. So I've got my Solenopsis, which are crazy. I've got these, which are crazy growths, and I've just recently got, on Saturday it arrived, meat ants, which are also a large species that grow crazy fast. Oh, as well as my Nicobrensis. I guess they go into the crazy breed because they grow really quickly as well. So yes, I've got meat ants here as well. I'm not showing them yet, but they are in my settling down, obviously, after all the transportation, and like I said, they've got a little Outworld attached to it as well. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, and I'll leave you with this monster queen. She's huge. Now I've obviously got these pictures. I didn't use them in my video, but they're so cool, and she's such a cool queen. I just wanted to put them in, so sit back and enjoy these last couple of pictures. Well, that's it for today then, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit the like and subscribe if you did, and if you want to keep track and follow this colony throughout the time that I have them, because they will feature a lot more once they get a bit bigger, because they're such an interesting species, and that queen's huge. If you guys want to support my channel with that little bit extra, I've got a Patreon page, which I'll put a link in the description below. So please join me in a big thank you to Adam W, Adrian, Antantics, Anty Matters, David D, Jason W, Kevin R, Paul A, Pavance, PJGrant and Wakooshi, because without your continued support my channel wouldn't be what it is today, so thank you. Well, that's it for today then guys. Hope you enjoyed this video and I look forward to seeing my next one. Bye bye for now.